and I am excited to be a part of that change.
A lot more work to be done, Chris. I cannot agree with you more on that. And you guys know his apology is his apology, but it felt like it got nothing more than a surface response on any of this.
A new report suggests Chris Harrison was iced out of the Bachelor franchise. Hey guys, welcome to another shared news from home. We have so much to get into with you. We're starting to put some of the puzzle pieces together about what really went down behind the scenes with Chris Harrison. But before we get into it, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. As always, I'm your host, Morgan Wright, joined today by the wonderful Zachary Reality. Zach, we've had some time to digest the big bombshell that Chris Harrison will no longer be the face of the Bachelor franchise. How are we feeling? Are we still confused? Have we kind of came to terms with it? How are you feeling about it all now?
I definitely have come to terms with it. It's been a few days, a few weeks. He's been kind of, taking a break from the franchise for over a month or two since Matt James's season when he didn't show up to the tell-all. So I've definitely come to terms with it, but I'm very sad to see this happen considering I have been watching the show for so many years. So it's definitely very upsetting, and I'm kind of interested to hear more about the behind-the-scenes backstory.
Yeah, so a new article just came out in the Hollywood Reporter, and it kind of explains how and why this all happened. Now, we obviously know what Chris Harrison did to get himself into that position. So I'm not really going to rehash the interview on Extra with Rachel Lindsay because we've all seen it a million times, right? What I want to start with, Zach, is on March 4th. That was nearly a month after taking his unplanned hiatus from The Bachelor. Chris Harrison returned to TV saying that he wasn't going anywhere. He was on Good Morning America with Michael Strahan, and he said,
I plan to be back, and I want to be back. This interview is not the finish line.
We saw that recorded interview on Good Morning America with Michael. And then afterwards, Michael Strahan said,
And you guys know his apology is his apology, but it felt like it got nothing more than a surface response on any of this. And obviously, he's the man who wants to clearly stay on the show, but only time will tell if there is any meaning behind his words.
So this report is saying that the produced nature of this sit-down interview is what made Michael Strahan upset with it, right? Because it looks like it's designed to protect Chris Harrison, where on the other hand, Michael wanted to do maybe a live interview, hear his answers, do a follow-up question, maybe dive a little deeper. But in a sit-down recorded interview, you definitely don't have as much control as an interviewer. So what do you think, Zach? Would it have been better for Chris Harrison to do a live interview with Michael Strahan, or do you think it was the right move to do a sit-down pre-recorded interview?
I would have liked to see a live interview. I would have liked to see a longer, more in-depth interview, possibly on Good Morning America or possibly on The Bachelor, if they could have dedicated a special episode, a bonus episode to kind of explain what went down. Because Chris has been a part of this franchise for 2 decades. He's not just some Joe Schmo on the street. So I don't really know if that was Chris's decision or the Bachelor franchise decision, or maybe it was someone at GMA or ABC's decision. But it seems like Michael Strahan and Chris Harrison both did not want the interview to go this way. And then you kind of mentioned that Michael made that comment at the end of the interview, kind of putting the nail in the coffin for Chris. I don't know if he necessarily buried Chris. I think that it didn't help. It definitely added to the fire. It added to the sinking ship that Chris was already going down on his own. And I think that Chris just didn't have a lot of time in this interview to explain where he was coming from. And it just didn't come across genuine because he didn't have the time. But he also maybe didn't use his time wisely. I saw a lot of fans complain that they thought he was reading from a script and that he was too rehearsed and that they didn't get to see those layers. So you can argue forever, maybe he didn't have the time to do it, or maybe he just didn't do it himself. And I don't think we can blame Michael Strahan for Chris losing his job, but like I mentioned, it definitely didn't help.
Yeah, it is interesting when you compare doing a live interview to a sit-down pre-recorded interview. And it's like, on one hand, let me just put myself in Chris Harrison's shoes for 1 second. Okay, I'm getting ready to do a follow-up interview. The last live interview I did pretty much ruined my career. I feel like Chris Harrison was probably very apprehensive to do another live interview on Good Morning America on ABC. I mean, I can imagine, quite frankly, I would have been scared to do one if I was Chris Harrison, knowing the things that he was facing, knowing the circumstances. But on the other hand, when you do that pre recorded interview, it does come across as very surface level. And it's like, how can people believe that you are doing what you say you're doing? You're putting in the work, you're doing the effort, you're trying to make changes behind the scenes when all we're really getting is that sentence right there, and I plan to be back, right? It didn't dive deep into the issue at all. And you don't want to say that Michael Strahan synced Chris Harrison's career, because at the end of the day, Michael Strahan has a right as the interviewer to say how he felt about the interview, and he was just
Mhm.
being honest. It wasn't a very deep interview. So, like I said, the Hollywood Reporter said that interview was, quote, the nail in the coffin for Chris Harrison. Now, there was also no public show of support for Chris from the network or the show's producers. The decision makers were privately telling Chris that they wanted him back and that he should remain patient, kind of keeping him on a little bit of a leash. And then days later, Caitlin and Tasha were announced as the mentors. Everyone was like, we're not hosts, whatever, but we all knew what was coming. We all kind of saw the writing on the wall. And it was after Caitlin and Tasha were announced that Chris then hired a lawyer. Zach, do you think that Chris saw where this was headed? Do you think the writing was kind of written on the wall, or do you think that he was just being maybe precautious and taking steps to protect himself if it got to where it is now?
I think that Chris always thought that he was going to come back. He said on the Good Morning America interview that he was planning on coming back. So I think that for a couple months, he really did believe that he was going to come back until the negotiations started to hit with Caitlyn and Tasha. And then they were definitely replacing him. And then there was talks that he wasn't going to come back for Paradise. I think that is when he got his lawyer a couple months ago. And then he knew that he was definitely going down on a sinking ship and probably not coming back. It baffles me that the franchise iced him out the way that he did, because yes, he made a mistake, but one mistake does not define his 20-year run with the franchise, where he has had a clean image for the past 2 decades. It's not like he's slipped up once or twice. Like, he has never slipped
Mm.
up. He's always been likable. He's been a huge part of Bachelor Nation. I can't even believe how dirty the franchise did him. That's what it kind of seems like when you're watching this all play out in the press. It seems like the franchise did him so dirty, but then again, he also got all that money, so they couldn't have done him too dirty. But it's like they didn't give him that opportunity to fix his image or to speak out on anything. And it seems like this GMA interview was produced and it wasn't in his control. It's like, why can't we get like a Chris Harrison statement on his Instagram or something? Like, we're not just gonna forget about Chris overnight. Like, we're just not.
Yeah, so you mentioned, his settlement, and I want to touch on that a little bit because according to Deadline, reported on June 9th, he walked away with a mid-range eight-figure payoff. Okay, we can all imagine how much that would be. The report says the network didn't want to risk going in front of a judge for wrongful termination, so they just kind of paid him out. Now, there was one quote in this article from a Hollywood strategic communications expert who wanted to be anonymous because of their ongoing work with ABC and Disney. Okay. So I feel like this is probably some juicy information. They said that getting rid of Chris Harrison seemed like a superficial PR move. The quote said, making a cosmetic change like this is the easiest thing in the world. And no doubt it seems like a surefire win to the suits at ABC and others. But replacing the host while leaving the same crowd of producers in charge does absolutely nothing to address the underlying systemic issues on the show. Shifting hosts is, appropriately enough, only a skin deep transformation. I mean, when I read that quote, I was like mind blown, because it is true, right? Chris Harrison, while he was the face of the Bachelor franchise, there were multiple people pulling his strings behind the scenes. So, what did you think reading this quote? And who would you say really is more to blame? Is it more the producers? Is it more the big wigs at ABC and Warner Brothers? Or do you think the blame was appropriately placed on Chris?
I think that the producers, the executives at ABC, the network specifically, because we know that the Bachelor franchise is a part of the ABC network. I think they were the ones who ultimately made the decision to ice Chris out, fire Chris, get rid of Chris, and terminate him. And it's so interesting that they paid him that, large salary to not speak about the issue so that they wouldn't go in front of a judge, because they were scared that if they did go in front of the judge, that, yeah, he was wrongfully terminated. I don't think that it's fair to fire someone for that mistake. No one agrees with what Chris said, but that was just one mistake in 20 years that we know of. At least I'm sure that there was things he's done behind the scenes, or things that maybe that happened with the contestants. I know Rachel Lindsay kind of spoke out about a couple things Chris said during his season of The Bachelorette. So no one is perfect. It's impossible to find a perfect host. I don't know where the franchise goes moving forward, because who is going to be Chris Harrison? Like, no one's going to be Chris Harrison. But I will say Caitlyn and Tayshia are doing a great job. And I just hope that Chris feels like he's going to get justice, not financially, but like with the public, because we're still missing so many information from him. And we just want to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, so let's talk about changing hosts for a minute, because this report, I mean, obviously everybody knows Caitlyn and Tayshia are much, much, much cheaper than Chris Harrison, right? And they have actually got more screen time than Chris Harrison did in Matt James' season. So to kind of show you the numbers, Caitlyn and Tayshia accounted for 7.6% of airtime during Katie's 2-hour premiere. Now, Chris Harrison on Matt James' season had 6.7%. Okay, so that's almost 1 full percent higher that you saw Caitlyn and Tayshia. Were you surprised by their screen time, Zach? I mean, I know we both love them, right? They're great.
Oh, so
But
much.
that's a
So
lot of
much.
screen time, and especially when you put it in comparison to a 1 whole percent more than seeing Chris on Matt James' season.
I mean, I think Caitlyn and Tayshia are fun. They're girls just like Katie is. They have the girl power going on. They have this dynamic duo. The two of them could feed off of each other and have funny commentary throughout the season. So I'm totally here for Caitlyn and Tayshia. I am not complaining about their airtime. I don't think the show is about them, but having like a duo that's gonna kind of provide the funny commentary throughout the season. They're so relatable as like us watching at home, like with the whole popcorn scene on night one. So I think it's awesome. I'm not really surprised by it either, because Chris Harrison was kind of a host. He was very bland, and he had some funny scenes, I think, over time throughout the years. He definitely did kind of have some rapport with some of the contestants, but there was many episodes where he really was just like, he said his 2 lines and then he left, and that was his role, and he did a great job at it. But I like that we're mixing it up a little bit, and I think we're going to see a lot more of Caitlyn and Tayshia throughout this season.
Yeah, so just having those two there as mentors or hosts or whatever the heck it is that they want to call them was something that the Bachelor franchise considered new. I mean, it is new, right? But they were like, okay, we kind of have to claw our way out of this hole that we're in. We need something new. We need something fresh, in hopes that we can be back on top where we once were. But according to The Hollywood Reporter, ratings for the show have dropped. And this season is actually the lowest rated back-to-back episodes in franchise history. Now, that sounds bad, Zach, but Katie's premiere ended up being first among the day's broadcast shows among adults ages 18 to 49. So that's their target demo, right? So they're winning their target demo, but overall ratings are down. Do you think that this is just because of a shift in the way that we experience entertainment these days? I mean, there's tons of streaming options. Nobody's really watching things live anymore. So do you think that it's a red flag that they're having these low ratings, or do you think people are just watching in different capacities?
It's funny that you bring that up, because low ratings for The Bachelor are still higher ratings than the majority of other shows, especially reality shows on TV. I mean, The Bachelor ratings are insane. So even if the numbers have dropped a little bit, it does not mean that the fan base is not still there. I think that a lot of fans have quit watching the show because of the Chris Harrison controversy, because of all the racism that has been experienced in Bachelor Nation. And I think that because of all of this, everything that's gone on, of course, less people are going to watch. I also think Katie is just not the most popular Bachelorette that we've had. I love her. We both love her, but she's just not the biggest name in compared to recent years. So I think that kind of plays into it, as well as it being summer and people are out and about. I don't think that they might have a low rating season, but it's not going to affect the franchise, I think, long term, because they're such a popular show and they always will be. But then at the same time, I'm like, maybe this is the beginning of the end for Bachelor Nation. It's been going on for so many years. How long could one reality show possibly go on? Like, are they going to be doing this in like 2050?
I mean, time will tell. Hopefully, if we're both around in 2050, we'll still be watching The Bachelor and
Yeah,
giving
and still talking
commentary
about
about
it.
it. Yeah, but it is interesting, especially when you see streaming services start to really take over on these reality shows. I mean, you and I, even though it's not necessarily a dating show, loved The Circle, Love is Blind, Too Hot to Handle. All of these things are coming from different, just not your cable TV, not the stuff that you're going to sit down and watch at 8 o'clock on Monday night. You can really watch this stuff wherever. And according to this report, the quote says, and Harrison, it seems, will be ready to field any calls. So, Zach, do you think that we will be seeing Chris Harrison host a different show, maybe on a streaming service in the future?
I hope so. Obviously he doesn't need the money. He's set for life. He can totally retire if he wants to, but I think that he doesn't want to end his career on this note where he is going out on these terms. So I think that the only really way for him to end his career as a host and entertainment is to host another show. He has years of experience. He's a great host. He's a well-known name. He still has a large fan base. Lots of people would want to see him. So I definitely think we'll see him somewhere soon. I don't know if it will be this year. It might take a year or two. I don't know what his contract is with ABC, but I definitely think we'll see him somewhere so that he can go out on a good note and end his career, in a more positive way.
Yeah, it could really go either way, multi-million dollar payout deal. It's like on one hand, Chris Harrison could go retire in his mansion in Dallas, live a good life with his kid in college, Lauren living with him, and just be done. But on the other hand, as entertainers, as a host, you always kind of have that itch that you just can't scratch. And it's like if you're sitting too long, you're just going to drive yourself nuts and you're just itching to get on to the next project. So I don't think that we have seen the last of Chris Harrison. I think that maybe a Netflix deal, maybe a Hulu deal, you never know. Maybe the next time we get a Keeping Up with the Kardashians reunion, it will be Chris Harrison doing the interview
Oh
and
my
not
God.
Andy
No,
Cohen.
we need Andy. We need Andy.
That's
And
true.
that is going to be on tomorrow night, and we're going to talk about it. So that is going to be really exciting.
All right, you guys, I know that is so much information, but hopefully we helped you put some of the puzzle pieces together as to what really went down with Chris Harrison, both on our TVs and behind the screen. Let us know in the comments what you think. Do you miss Chris Harrison? Are you here for Caitlyn and Tasha? Do you think that Chris should have at least gotten one more season? Or do you think, he's got his $25 million, he's good to go?
Mhm.
Make sure you ring the bell and subscribe to our channel as well so you don't miss out on any future updates. And say hi to us on our social media channels. Our handles are on the screen right now. You guys, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.